Thanks everyone for joining us. We've had a fantastic response to this little competition. We spoke to David about doing this back in December, not realizing that we were all going to be locked down again, and obviously all the colleges be shut. So I think it's been great that we've done it, and people have appreciated it, and we've got this number of people joining us today for this little demo. So we're just going to go through a little bit on Ultratex, just the basics, nothing too advanced really, just what it does, what we use it for, why I like it, and it's one of MSK's biggest selling products. It's incredibly good and very, very easy to use. And for anyone who's not used our products, it's a great introduction to what we do and how we can kind of like help chefs and make their lives easier. The other product we're using obviously is this Yorkshire force rhubarb. This is probably one of my favorite ingredients. One of the reasons I really like it is I always used to find after Christmas you've sort of had that Christmas rush, and you're sick of all of the food that you do on the run up to Christmas, and then you come back in January for the new year, and it's the rhubarb season. So and it always reminds me a little bit of spring, and I think it's a nice sort of step towards that we are, although it's caning it down with snow here. The next season is spring, which is is always my favourite coming out of the winter. So it's great for that. It's very, very versatile, very unique, and as a Yorkshireman, it also I'm very keen on it for that reason as well. I'm going to swap you to. I've got another camera so you can see what I'm doing on the table. I'll just swap that over, and that should be a bit better. So there you can see what I'm doing. You don't have to look at my ugly face anymore. So this is Ultratex, which is in its basic format is a thickening agent. Yeah, so it's a white powder, very easy to use, and it replaces things like corn flour and arrowroot. It also very good for making things like fluid gels, which some of you may have done using things like agar and things like that. Great flavor release, doesn't inhibit the flavors that are in there, and doesn't have a flavor itself. And when it thickens as well, lovely and shiny, lovely and clear. So all around, it's a great product. So we're going to start off with some basics around using that. Okay. So here I've got, this is just a little bit of rhubarb juice, yeah, which I've made, which we're going to go through in a minute how I've made that. And we're just going to go through the basics of using Ultratex and why it is so good. Now, just check that everyone can see that. So, a whisk, tub of Ultratex, and a spoon. Okay. Now, we start off by adding, I've got probably, I don't know, about 300 mils of liquid here in this bowl, and 1 dessert spoon of Ultratex. And I'm just going to sprinkle that over the top and allow it to hydrate. And just give that a little mix with the whisk. Now at that low dosage, all that's going to do is just thicken that ever so slightly. And something like that now can be used for splitting a dressing, which we're going to do a bit later on a cold salad or something like that. You've just taken, it'll just hold on a plate now, okay? As we add a little bit more, we move up the thickness, and we're going to end up over thickening this, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So as we add another spoon, we now sort of come to what I would class as kind of like a sauce consistency, like what you'd use as a gravy or something like that. So if you've got like a chicken jus or a nice lamb jus, yeah, but you don't really want to use a heavy stock like a beef stock or something like that. You're much nicer making it with maybe water or a light white chicken stock. So you get that lovely roasted flavour, but it's very, very thin, and it's not going to hold on the plate. It isn't going to glaze the meat or glaze anything that you put it on. So by adding just a fraction of Ultratex, we start to get there now a sort of sauce consistency. If you think about glazing ox cheeks or a lamb shank or something like that, it just helps to get that to glaze and give it that lovely shine. And you can see there that that's lost none of its shine. It's very difficult through the camera, but you can see it's nice and clear and it's lost none of its shine. So we're going to add another spoon now. And now we're starting to get to a very light puree. So it's just starting to hold on that plate and sort of keep its shape. We had a touch more. Now, and see if you can see this. As I sprinkle on now, the Ultratex starts to sit on the top. Now, when it starts to do that, you're starting to reach the maximum hydration of the Ultratex. So there's a certain amount of water with any substance, whether it be rhubarb juice, beetroot juice, a chicken stock, a lamb stock. Ultratex needs that water to hydrate it. When that's all been used up, there's nothing left for the Ultratex to be absorbed into. And that's when you meet the maximum. And the first telltale sign of that is when you start sprinkling on the top, you immediately get white. It doesn't start to dissolve. So now we're just at kind of like a fluid gel type consistency. So you can see if I put that on the plate, you can just pull that and it'll start to hold and won't actually move. We can add a tiny bit more to that now, just to thicken it up a little bit more. Now, I've done a sample of dishes up today, and one of them we've done a little milfoil, which we've used a little gel for. So for that, you want to go as thick as you can. And that's probably now we're at maximum. So if I just take a spoon out of here, that'll just sit on the plate and it's there. But it isn't a gel, it's still just a thickened liquid. So it's not got that glazing property or bite property to it. It's still very, very soft. Okay, so now we're going to go add too much, yeah, which every chef who's ever worked for me has always done. Add too much, and what happens is there's no more liquid left there to hydrate the Ultratex. So what I end up with, I'm hoping you can see that, is a very, very lumpy, and it's got little white granulates in there of unhydrated starch granules, Ultratex granules, yeah? Okay, now if this happens, what that needs now is you can't pass that out because it's too fine. The particles are too fine. You'll just end up with them still in your sauce or your gel or whatever it is. What you need to do, add more juice into that, add more liquid to it. So you can add a touch of water, yeah, or you can add a touch of whatever your liquid is. So I'm going to add a bit more of my rhubarb juice. Just add a small amount at first and just work that in. And this is the same, if you thicken it up too far, so you've thickened your sauce up and you've gone, oh no, it's too thick. All you've got to do then is just let it down a little bit. So there's no set recipe. You can't say, oh, you need 20 grams of Ultratex to thicken 500 mils of water, 500 mils of stock. The idea behind the product is that it's completely for the chef to control and decide what he wants. So it depends on how thick your product is you originally started with, and what purpose you want to use it for. So it's designed to give you, the chef, complete control on what you want to do. So we work that back in, and you can see now back at that kind of fluid gel type consistency with no lumps in there, and that's ready to go. Okay, now you can use this, could be, obviously I'm using rhubarb juice, hence because of the purpose of the competition, but this can be used within the competition. It doesn't have to be used on the rhubarb. It can be used to thicken the sauce, can be used to make an alternative gel, use it for a puree. If you do something like a leek puree, it's great to add a little bit of Ultratex into it just to hold the free waters from leaching out from it. So there's lots of different options to do with that, but that's just a quick basic run through of what it does. It's a very easy product to use, no trouble. Very important to just add it, to use a spoon or a ladle or something like that when you're adding it. So you're adding it gradually. Use a whisk to stir it in. don't do it in a Thermomix or a RoboCoupe or something like that, or a stick blender. You want to do it by hand. That's the best way of doing it, and you'll get maximum yield out of the strength of the Ultratex. Okay, so that's our first bit done. So next we're going to talk about rhubarb. I'm going to go through three methods of cooking rhubarb. These are the three sort of ways that I would use in the restaurant, and the ways that I like to do it. So we're going to talk firstly about making a rhubarb puree. So here I've just got some rhubarb. I've just very roughly chopped it up, taken the tops off, very roughly chopped it up, and I put it into like a roasting tray, a metal tray. Make sure that's nice and clean. I'm just adding a couple of slices of oranges to that, and I'm going to add a little sprinkle of sugar. And now obviously the amount of sugar you add depends on whether you're looking to use this for a savory application or a sweet application. So what I used to do was just add a tiny amount, not too much, and you can always sweeten it up and increase that later on. So you're not making one rhubarb puree for pastry, one rhubarb puree for dessert. That goes like that. And then we just cover that with some tin foil. Then we're just going to put that into the oven. Just got that at 180, and you can just leave that and sit away. It's just an easier way of doing it to bake it in the oven than it is having it in a pan where you've got to keep looking at it, and there's more chance of it catching and more chance of it burning. It's a nice way of doing it, and you don't need to add any liquid to that whatsoever. It will just slowly let all the water come out of the rhubarb. Okay. The next way we're going to talk about is poaching. Okay. Now, I think there's obviously, you know, with sous vide and things like that, and low temperature cooking and stuff like that. But for this, we're just going to do it how I do it. Very, very easy, very, very straightforward, and practical for everyone to do for this competition. All I've got in here is some water. I've added some sugar to that. Again, sweeten that up to what degree you want, depending it's for sweet or savory. I'm going to put that on to bring it up to the boil. Okay. Then, obviously, there's different levels. For this now, I'm just using water. Okay, sugar and water, that's it. We can add a bit of flavour to that. So for one of the dishes I'm going to do today, I've done a star anise and ginger syrup. For this one, we're just doing it plain. Now, you can use that poaching liquor. You could make a juice and then poach it in that juice, which is obviously really going to increase the flavour, but it's not always practical to do that. And one of the good little cheats for getting around that is to just add a little splash of grenadine to your poaching liquor, which will just help with the colour and help with the flavour. Don't add too much or you spoil the nice pink colour of the rhubarb, but it is a good way of making a nice poaching liquor for that. So I'm just going to bring that up to the boil. Okay. I've just somebody sent a message who saying some can't log on because we've reached the max. Obviously, we'll have to, if there's a load more people want to do it, maybe we'll do something again or do a shorter one. But this will be recorded, so we can give it to you to distribute to the students. Okay, so we'll wait for that to come up to the boil. We're going to talk about the third thing we're going to do, which is making the rhubarb juice, which is what I've used for the that I thickened up with the Ultratex earlier on. Now, there's two ways of doing this. The easiest way to do it is to just take rhubarb sticks, top and tail them, and then put them through a centrifugal juicer, which will get all the extract out, and use that. The other way, which I think I prefer is to chop your rhubarb again very, very roughly, just like this. Put it into a bowl, okay? Again, I just add a touch of sugar to that onto the top. And then cling film the bowl. Okay, nice and tightly. All the way around. And then just sit that bowl on top of a pan of boiling water and leave that to tick away for an hour, hour and a half, something like that. And you'll see all the rhubarb will very, very slowly stew down and release all the liquid out of it. Now, here, as with all great demos, I have one that I've already done. So just remove the cling film from that. And you can see you end up with a very, very clear, crystal clear, beautiful pink rhubarb consomme, which is really, really nice. That also works great with strawberries. It's also really nice if you do rhubarb and strawberries, chuck them both in. Then just take a bowl and a sieve, normally line it with muslin as well, and then just spoon that out and let your liquid, be careful not to break it up. Like same as you do if you were passing a consomme. And you get that fantastic, lovely pink liquid, which, well, that's not got much sugar in it, so it's a bit tart, but you can then add other flavors to that and sweeten that up for whatever use you're going to do. Okay, so that's our three. So our liquid here is boiling now, so that's our poaching liquor. So all I do now is throw in my rhubarb battens into the pan, tip them out into a container. Cover that with some cling film and just leave it, let it cool down, and that will cook the rhubarb. It will still be nice and al dente, nice and crunchy. It won't go to mush, which is what you want for this. So you've got some texture still to it, and that's the easiest and simplest, most straightforward way of poaching rhubarb. Okay, so that's our three methods of cookery. Obviously, there's lots of different ways of making rhubarb purees. And essences and all of that. These are ones that I use in the restaurant, and I just find them the most straightforward, the most simple, and the most practical for doing it. And rhubarb's such a great product. You don't want to mess about with it too much. You just want to let it speak for itself in what it's doing. Okay, so we're now going to do something a bit more advanced and just show a great use of Ultratex, something we've used quite a lot over the past couple of years for our demos, which works really well. So we're going to make a very, very quick rhubarb souffle, okay, using Ultratex. So in this bowl here, I've got some rhubarb puree, cooked exactly how I've said, just in the oven, baked. Take the orange out and puree it up. In here, I've got 100 mils of water. And I've got in this little pot here 20 grams of Ultratex. Now, this is nowhere near enough water to hydrate this amount of Ultratex. what I'm looking to do is to thicken up this puree to make it into, so it's a base, so it's got structure to hold the egg whites and allow me to bake it and make a souffle. So I need to thicken that up, and I need to get this Ultratex into there. There's no way that there's enough free water in this rhubarb puree. If I add this Ultratex into there, it's just going to go grainy and horrible. So what we do to allow us to do this is I add the Ultratex to some water. Okay, stir that in gradually, and this will go really, really thick, like really thick wallpaper paste. Okay. Can you see that? How it's, you see, it will all completely, there we go, stick to the whisk. Yeah, so it's really not nice at all. But what I've achieved by doing that is I've partially hydrated all of that Ultratex. It's not fully hydrated, it's got loads of little lumps in it. When I add the puree now into there, what that will allow that to do, that partially hydrated Ultratex kind of will grab hold of any free moisture left in this puree, and we'll end up with a lovely, smooth, thick base for our souffle. You have to add this sort of gradually, just carefully mix it in, as with any, when you've got something really thick, you're trying to let it down, but it will go in. If you end up with a few lumps and stuff like that, just pass it through a sieve, and you will get them out with this method. Keep working that in. And you can see how that's starting now to come together. And now we've got a lovely souffle base. Quickest and easiest, simplest souffle base you'll ever make. Okay, so we've got that ready there. So we just put that over there. So just to make this a bit more interesting, what I've done here is I've just lined the molds with, this is just ground up ginger nuts, just ground down to a fine powder. I've buttered my molds. Can you see that? And just sprinkle that inside. It just makes it a bit more interesting and a bit different. So that's that. So that's our molds buttered and lined, ready. We've got 140 grams of our souffle base, and I'm just going to whisk up some egg whites. Lost the whisk. Go on. Go. Just got them whisking up. So I'm using 120 grams of egg whites and 100 grams of sugar. You might not be able to hear me now while I just whisk up these. I won't say anything for a minute. So got our egg whites whisked up there. So we just start to fold in the first bit. Quite rough with that, and just get that really mixed in so you free up all of your base. Not got any stuck on the bottom of the bowl. And then a little more carefully fold in the rest. Level off the tops. Clean up the molds. And then just to make this a little bit different, I'm just going to put on the top of these, this is just a little crumble mix. So some oats, flour, a little bit of panela sugar, a few more ginger nuts, just roughly chopped up. And I'm just going to very carefully sprinkle that onto the top, just to make it into a little rhubarb crumble souffle. And I just push that down a little bit so they're just sat in the mix and they don't just all blow off when the fan in the oven starts. On there. Okay. So put those in the oven. Put those in at 180, and they'll take about 15 minutes or so just to bake. Get rid of all of this and we'll get on with our next dish. Okay, so obviously when we set this up, we said it could be either a savory or a sweet dish. So this is a savoury dish. This is one that I'm going to be honest, I've never done in the restaurant. It was just something I was trying to think of something different to do, and I thought, oh, this would be really nice to do. So we're going to do a mackerel, like a mackerel escabeche, but rather than using orange juice, I've used rhubarb juice to cure the mackerel. So I'm going to start off with a pan and some olive oil. And then I've got some nice shallot rings, some thinly sliced carrots, and some thinly sliced garlic, which I'm just going to start sweating off just very quickly in the pan, not for too long. Okay. Wait for my pan to heat up. So we just start that sweating off. Then I've got some of my rhubarb juice. Now this has got ever such a tiny amount of sugar in it, so it's quite high in acidity. So that will work really well for curing the mackerel. Okay. A little bit of thyme and bay leaf in there as well. Once that's just sweated off for a minute, I'm going to add rhubarb juice and just reduce it down ever so slightly. Just let that bubble away. And then what I've got here is some very thinly sliced rhubarb, which I'm just going to add this right at the end. Same as when I did the poaching. I'm not actually going to use any heat because I want it to still remain al dente and still have the crunch. I don't want it to go to mush. So I want it to still have texture when you eat it. So take off that rhubarb juice. There. And throw in my sliced rhubarb, and that's our marinade now ready for the mackerel. Now, if you think it's a little bit too sharp, which mine is, I'm just going to add a little touch of sugar to that, a bit of salt, and a bit of pepper. So that's our mackerel curing ready. Now, the way I have already done this, now, the way I've done this is mine that I've done already. What I actually do is pan fry the mackerel first. So I just seal it on its skin side first. I don't know if you can see that, just to get a bit of color on it. And then I put it into the warm liquor. I just do that because it's the way we used to do red mullet at a restaurant that I worked, which is where this dish came from. And I just think it's a nicer way of doing it. So I've just put that there onto that tray. So that's my 2 mackerel fillets. Onto that. I'm going to take some of this curing liquor and just warm that up. Just a dressing to go with it. So I'll just grab a plate. Okay. So I've got some here, just some toasted sourdough bread with a little olive oil and garlic. Just, I'm going to do two. Put that on there. Just got a little bit of baby gem lettuce. Going to slice that. I'm just going to dress the lettuce with a bit of my I'm just going to blow torch the tops of the mackerel just to take a bit of the coal off them. I would normally put them just through the oven, but I'm not going to open the oven up while I've got my souffles in there and you lot are all watching me do this and make a mess of those. So we're just going to take our mackerel fillets on the top of our sourdough. And then we're just going to, on the top of that, some of our vegetables and our rhubarb. And I've just got a little bit of pickled samphire to go on the top. Then we've got a little bit of the dressing, which I'm just going to glaze over the top of that. Just going to finish it with a little bit of a rhubarb gel just on top of those mackerel fillets. So I've done this as a bit of a kind of like lunchtime sort of brunch style dish. I didn't want to sort of do all these dishes today, fine dining. I want to try and do stuff that's a bit different. But I thought that was quite a nice little dish, a little bit unusual, very tasty, but a different use of rhubarb that's a bit not quite the norm. So that's our little rhubarb and mackerel escabeche. So, right, about a couple of minutes for the souffles. I'll just tidy this away. So I'm just going to serve our souffle with, I've just made, this is just the rhubarb juice, half vodka, a little bit of sugar. So it's just a very, very simple little rhubarb schnapps as a little drink to go with it. I've just got a rhubarb sorbet. And there we have, see that? Rhubarb crumble souffle. 2, 1 spare just in case. And that's that. Okay, this is a very, very simple, very easy. It's something. It's just another use for Ultratex that people don't immediately think of. But you can knock up a souffle incredibly quickly, incredibly easily. It can be any fruit puree you want. Obviously, just play around with the flavors and whatnot. But it just makes a souffle. I love souffles. I always used to have them on the menu at the restaurant. I think they're really great. This is a very characteristic way we served it. I love doing a little drink with it. Obviously, you've got the sorbet or an ice cream, maybe a sauce to go in it. But it's a dead easy, really nice dish that works really well. So that one there is our souffle. Just get rid of that. Okay. Right. So I'm going to do one more savoury dish quickly and show you that. And then I've got 5 different desserts that we've pre-made just to talk about, just to go through, just to sort of give you a few ideas of what sort of dishes we're thinking for this competition. What I think with rhubarb is one of those. I think it's a very homely ingredient, and you want something that people really want to eat. You know, that really makes you go, yeah, that I could eat that. You know, that's what I want to eat. I'm going to be upset when I finish the plate. That's the kind of thing that I'm certainly looking for from this dish. I think with rhubarb, I think it needs that. It doesn't want too many flavors to go with it. It just wants to be really bold and sort of really sing rhubarb and make that shine out. So we're going to do a little duck dish very, very quickly. We'll reheat this duck a little bit. Now, for this, I've used the rhubarb in 2 ways. I've done a little bit of poached rhubarb in a ginger and star anise syrup. So all I do now with that, put that in a pan and just warm it up very, very gently. You don't want it to be too hot because you'll overcook it. A nice way of doing it is to just put a little bit on the hot plate under the lights and just let it warm up very, very gently. And then what I've done here is I've taken some of the rhubarb juice, some vinegar, some honey, a few spices, and just made up a nice glaze to glaze the duck in. So again, I'm using rhubarb in 2 ways on this dish. So just warm the glaze back up, try not to burn it. And then I'll just glaze this up quickly. One of the things I do like about doing the Zoom demos is that none of you can taste this, so it doesn't really matter what it tastes like. So I've just got some pak choy in the middle. A few very simply roasted seasonal vegetables. I think you don't want anything too complicated with this. So I've just got some parsnips, some carrots, celeriac, a few sprouts because I love sprouts. What I've done with the sprouts is I've just blanched those ones. You can see that, halved them and then roasted them just to get a bit of colour to get that flavour. But what I also do is keep the outside leaves as well, and just very, very lightly blanch those and butter them and just put them around as well. A few mushrooms. So I've got some duck breast that I've just pre-fried off, just sealed it off, crisped up the skin a little bit. It's a bit weird because I had to get this from Tesco's and for some reason they decided to cut it in half. I don't quite understand. But then I've got my glaze, so I'm just going to add that over the top. And I'm just going to put that back on the stove and just reduce it down. And glaze that all up. And we've got our rhubarb battens to go on. And I'm also going to do, I've got some little battens of ginger in this syrup as well, which I'm going to put on just to give it a little bit of a kick. So just reduce that down, that glaze around the duck, and make sure that it's all really thick and coated and sticky. Just give that another 30 seconds on there. So once that's all glazed, really nice and shiny, take that out.
No, no.
Take the fillets off and put them underneath, just so we don't waste them. Got our roast duck on the top. Then I'm just going to finish this with a little bit of the rhubarb syrup, which I've added. I've left this so it's a little bit sweet and sour. So just a tiny bit on there, which I've just thickened ever so slightly with a little bit of Ultratex, just so it holds. And then for this dish, I'd serve a nice duck jus, a plain duck jus with maybe a little hint of anise and ginger in that as well, just to carry that on, and serve that separately. So when you, and by getting the two, you can get the rhubarb syrup and the Ultratex, the rhubarb syrup and the duck sauce to the same consistency. So when you sauce the plate, you'll get a bit of a marble effect of that. It won't just be a syrupy water on there, and it's just quite a nice little roast seasonal duck dish, obviously based around sort of duck and orange, but rather than the orange, we swap that out for the rhubarb. That's our second dish, or third dish, whatever I'm on. Now, we're doing all right for time. So the last thing I've got is I've just got 4 dishes that we've made already, actually 5 I've got there, that I'm just going to talk through and show you. We're just going to take some pictures of these and post them on social media over the next few weeks, just to give a bit of an inspiration and whatnot as to what we do. So I think everyone, if you think of rhubarb, you immediately, the first thing, you'll note the dessert I've done. This is my dessert. The other desserts Vicky's done. I've done the crumble, the nice simple one. You'll spot the ones that I haven't done. So all I've got here is the same crumble mix that I used to go on top of the souffle. So that goes in there. I've made an apple compote and then just put some poached rhubarb into there. But what I've also got with this is some caramelized white chocolate. So I've just added some of that to it as well, just to make it a bit different. Got the ginger nuts in here as well. I'll give you a little tip with ginger nuts as well. That something I learned is they make an excellent cheesecake base. If you swap out your digestives and use ginger nuts instead, makes a lovely cheesecake base. We're going to put that on the top there for our crumble. And then just put that back through the oven, just to warm up the top, just crisp up a little bit more. And a very simple rhubarb crumble, but just a little bit, we just added a little bit of interest to it by adding that caramelized white chocolate to the topping, just to make it stand out. So that's one of our desserts. Then here we've got a rhubarb tart with a vanilla ice cream. So that's just a pastry galette base, blind baked, puff pastry between 2 sheets, creme pat over the top, poached rhubarb sliced, fanned around, back through the oven just to caramelize it slightly on the top. A nice quenelle of ice cream. We've got our thickened Ultratex, our thickened rhubarb syrup just to serve with it. And then for that on the top, we've just made a little rhubarb, if you can see that, a little rhubarb spiral. So that's just some poached rhubarb that's then baked in the oven and twisted round a metal rod just to make that shape. So we've done that as a little simple garnish for that. And the next one we've got here is a little rhubarb millefeuille. So again, puff pastry, blind baked in the oven, cut into neat rectangles, ice and sugar over the top. And then inside we've done a rhubarb gel. So that's our rhubarb juice thickened up with the Ultratex. Running down the middle is a rhubarb puree, and then creme mousseline, so creme patissiere mixed with some whipped cream, and put that in there. Again, we're trying to show some of our favorite dishes, and this is the kind of thing that I think rhubarb lends itself to, these sorts of dishes. But we're looking for you to just take these and just make them a bit more, take these principles of cooking and just advance them and add a bit more interest to them. We've also done here some little rhubarb eclairs, choux buns. So again, fill those with a thickened, can you see that? A thickened rhubarb gel, a little bit of rhubarb puree, and our creme patissiere, just to make them a little bit different and a bit unusual. It's surrounded by rhubarb here. And then our final dish, just getting, again, a bit more of an advanced style of dish. We've got a little rhubarb charlotte. So we've got poached sticks of rhubarb lining the outside of a ring. We filled the center with a vanilla and orange mousse. Inside of that, we've just put a little frozen block of a rhubarb juice to give it a liquid center, and then topped it off with a rhubarb jelly, all made using the same principles as the basics I've shown you right at the beginning. We'll just finish this off, a little bit of rhubarb gel. Quinella sorbet and our rhubarb tuile. Everyone can see that one there. So as I said, we're going to take some photos of all of these. We'll post them online over the next few weeks, just to sort of, so you can all see them and in a bit more detail. I hope everyone's been able to see and hear okay. It's very unusual doing this and whatnot. We've done quite a few now. I think we're getting better. We are. Let me swap that camera over so you can see my face. There we go. That's better. Yeah, we hope we're getting better at this and trying to get all the information across. It's just to give a bit of an idea of some of the things you can do with rhubarb and whatnot. And it also stops me being stuck at home doing homeschooling, looking after 3 kids, which I'd much rather be here teaching cooking than trying to show how bad I am at English and maths, and my kids realizing how thick I really am. So thanks a lot for joining us. I'm really looking forward to seeing everyone's entries. Obviously, we want a dish, and I just want a little short video, just like I've done, just describing the dish. I think for me personally, being a chef in a restaurant, I find it much easier to talk, to describe a dish, than write it on a piece of paper. I hate menu descriptions and all of that. So I just wanted somebody just to say, you know, this is the rhubarb crumble. Why I've made it like this is because of this, and you tell me why it stands out. That's all. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing your entries. I have recorded this. I'll work out how we can post that and put it on. If we get more response, if anyone needs to see it, I can put that so everyone can see it. And brilliant. Thank you very much for joining us. Cheers. Bye-bye.